Yesterday somebody said to me, hey, what happened to that lead sarcophagus that was found underneath Notre Dame? And I was like, oh yeah, what happened to that lead sarcophagus found under Notre Dame? So let's go find out. Now, just for a quick recap, after the fires that destroyed the iconic spire that you can see right here in 2019, a team of archaeologists were brought in to make sure that the floor wasn't damaged during the cleanup. Well, that turned out to be too late because when the roof came crashing down, it actually busted a hole in the floor and exposed a 19th century heating system, which you can see the pipes for here on my left and above me. And beneath that was a whole trove of unknown artifacts, including painted sculptures, several ancient tombs, and most famously, this lead guy on my left. Now, all of these artifacts were excavated from about a metre below the church's surface, or 3.3 feet, and it's from a layer that dates to about 1700, and it's believed that the sarcophagus itself actually dates to the year 1300. If this is the case, this is actually an insanely rare find, because we don't really get these kinds of burial practices occurring in the Middle Ages. So when this was first discovered, many of us were still in the grips of the pandemic, and the internet responded with a resounding, do not open that damn thing, to which everyone seemed to kind of agree, and it was promptly forgotten about. But back in March of this year, researchers inserted an endoscopic camera, which is one of these guys. It's basically a tiny camera on the end of a long flexible rod, and it has a light on the end so you can see. And when they inserted that camera, what they found was... Now, what they were able to see was the upper part of a skeleton laying on a pillow of leaves, which was a common practice for the Middle Ages, apparently, and some fabric and a few other objects that couldn't actually be identified. This is most likely because, having used these types of cameras, they have pretty aggressively, like, fisheye style lenses, and it's really hard to see anything when it's dark and it's really cramped, like the camera's like this far from what you're trying to see, and even though it has a light, it's really, really hard to see. Since this person was buried in a lead coffin, it's obvious that they were extremely radioactive, and they were probably one of the pioneers of radioactive research. Or they were just a high dignitary of the church, which is probably more likely since they were buried with like this really nice artistic stuff like this. As well as this thing behind me. Now, this is called a rood screen. It's like a big ornate screen that they place at the entrance of the church. And pieces of this were actually buried with this person as well. So they're probably related to the church. I mean, being buried under the church, that seems obvious. But they were probably somebody pretty high up since their burial practices are pretty uncommon at the time. Something like this was included. And they had all this nice art sculptures and stuff as well. Now, archaeologists will eventually open this coffin. Now, it does need to be treated with this respect because it is human remains. So this was a living person and the correct protocols need to be followed. But what they're hoping to learn is the person's sex, their age, their cause of death, where they lived, and a whole lot of other things that you can determine from their bones and teeth, as well as possibly get a carbon date to see exactly when they were buried. But either way, this one's still a mystery. There's no demons inside, the world hasn't ended. I mean, we haven't opened it yet technically, so it still might, but we still don't know much about this, so it's still kind of a mystery. Hit that follow button for more content.